Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel for another Project Zomboid video. In this one, I wanted to get a bit of a discussion topic going with you guys, so the gameplay in the background won't necessarily be related to the topic we're talking about here. It'll just be some filler whilst I have a nice little chat with you guys about what I think Project Zomboid needs to bring to the table in the future to become an even more successful game than it already is today. If you do find this video entertaining, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Project Zomboid tips and guides. I'd also be interested to hear your own thoughts in the comments. The whole point of this video is to get people sharing their ideas, so let's see what you can think up. So, we'll start off with the elephant in the room so that we can get this out of the way. Multiplayer. Now, for those that aren't aware of the situation, multiplayer hasn't been in the most recent version of Project Zomboid for quite some time now, whilst the developers work on making it stable for the current version. Obviously, there's a lot of valued players in the community that really want multiplayer to come back. Patience is a virtue with this one, and I'm honestly sick to death of hearing people whinging about the wait, but once it does come back to the game, we're likely to see a new wave of players that hit the ground, and that's extremely exciting. I know I'm going to be setting up a server once it comes back, and I'm sure many people will be doing the same, whether that's RP, PvE, PvP. It's all going to be an interesting experience to play through, and will ultimately add a huge amount of longevity to everyone's possible playtime for the game. Okay, so now that we've got the obvious one out of the way, I wanted to talk about something that's tied to another major feature we're expecting for the future of Project Zomboid, but maybe not something that many have thought about in detail. Now, those of you that have followed Project Zomboid for a long time will likely know already that the team want to implement NPCs at some stage to spice up our playthroughs, but I want to focus here on something a little bit different and a little bit deeper, and that's the level of interaction that we can have with these NPCs. There's a huge amount of potential here, and I think it's incredibly important that this gets developed over time to expand into a whole major element of its own. So, for example, do you guys think we'll likely see NPC settlements in the future? We already have random buildings that have been boarded up, and modded maps even add remnants of strongholds left by survivors. So we could possibly expect randomly generated settlements filled with NPCs. I'd even take this one step further and say that if this does come to the game, it would be fantastic to see quest givers and reputation. One of the main things Project Zomboid players complain about, at least in my experience, is reaching those long playthroughs where you've survived for a month or two and then just run out of reasons to do anything. You're self-sufficient, you've got enough fuel for weeks, and pretty much don't have to go anywhere from that point. With the implementation of quests or missions that can be acquired from settlements, we'll be tasked with objectives to make us venture into areas that we otherwise wouldn't. For example, a settlement needs medical supplies from a nearby hospital, and you're tasked with finding them. Maybe it's a specific piece of equipment like a defibrillator. As a reward, you gain reputation with them, eventually unlocking the use of a camp trader and the purchase of certain items, or maybe even followers to come and join you on your adventures. Now, obviously, I'm no developer, and I can't say how difficult something like this would be. But if something like this is doable, then it could bring back a lot of longevity to the game itself. You've then got the potential for rivalries between different groups of survivors that you could get involved in as well, naturally leaving you enemies with some people and at risk of attacks, and friendly with others, and maybe you could help them and they would help you, who knows. Remember, this is just an idea, and it's completely okay if you don't agree that this is needed for the game. This is really just my forum for voicing my ideas with you guys and seeing what you think. Who knows, maybe a modder will pick these ideas up and run with it. Next up is something that I've seen some modders working on, and the footage I'm showing right now is directly from the Project Zomboid Reddit here, and that's the subterranean levels of the map. Again, I'm no expert, but I think the way this works is basically there is an area of the map that is inaccessible somewhere in the world, and that can only be entered via a doorway, and when you enter the doorway it teleports you to that location. The best use for this is for things like basements, but it also opens the way to some incredibly cool scenes that could be explored, like underground metros or hidden military facilities based underground. I wouldn't consider this a major feature by any means, but it would be an incredibly cool touch to the game and would pave the way for some unique environments we haven't seen just yet. So the next one I want to talk about is something that I've been craving ever since I saw the expanded helicopter events mod that was released recently, and that's an expansion of the current dynamic events that happen in the world around us in Project Zomboid. This will quite heavily tie applying to NPCs, of course, as there's only so much you can actually add to the game without NPCs being there to play out these scenarios. But think about what we have right now. Basically, we have some sounds that go out every so often, like people screaming or gunfire or shouting. Now, not only could there be more additions to this particular mechanic, say like an ambulance or a police car rushing by with the sirens on, pulling zombies in the area across a trail, but once NPCs are in, there could be a whole plethora of events they could bring to the game. Bandit raids, strangers being held at gunpoint whilst their houses are searched by looters, all sorts of things. Think of the scenarios that come with the game This War of Mine if you've played that. Things that really make the player feel racked with guilt for walking by without intervening, but knowing that intervening would put you at great risk. Now, finally, I wanted to wrap up with some food for thought. Project Zomboid has some fantastic things coming up, from the massive sound overhaul to hunting mechanics and the re-implementation of multiplayer. But never forget that many of the mods to Project Zomboid can bring you closer to a fully realized experience right now. There are mods like Le Gourmet Revolution, which adds hunting, a hugely expanded cooking system, and multitudes of crops to farm. Superb Survivors, bringing NPCs to Project Zomboid and allowing you to recruit them to a home location where they can then earn their keep for you, whilst also bringing in the extra danger of hostile survivors. Map mods to expand your playtime like Raven Creek, Eerie Country, the list goes on. My point here is that Project Zomboid has a way to go, but we already have a community of people working very hard to making Zomboid into an even greater game that it is, and with time, the developers will be sure to do that as well. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.